Everybody ready to start? We'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. And if there's no changes to the minutes in September, can I get approval of the minutes?
I'll make the motion to approve the September minutes.
I'll second.
We have a first and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Same sign, motion carries. Next we'll go to the financial audit report for year end June 30 by Jeremy Behrens from Mike Bailey.
All right, so what you should have in front of you in these blue binders is a copy of the financial statements as well as a copy of our slide deck here. And in there we have the required communications to the board as well as the financial statement. I try to put it all up on these slides so we're not flipping around between a bunch of different reports. Quick introduction. Again, my name is Jeremy Behrens. We're partnered at Bailey. I was just telling Christy, this is year 5 for us. Working with your team, it doesn't seem like it's been that long. I would have took a shot at maybe 3 or 4, but it's been 5 years. I work with about 18 critical access hospitals in the state of Iowa and Nebraska. Our firm works with hundreds of critical access hospitals across the country. And what we're going to go through today is your facilities performance as well as talk about some of the trends that I'm seeing in Iowa critical access hospitals. All right, so as your auditor, what's my responsibility? Is to obtain reasonable assurance that the financial statements are free from a material misstatement and then express an opinion on those financial statements. In terms of the opinion, we have a qualified opinion. This is consistent with years previous, more commonly known as an except for opinion. And ultimately what it's saying is that we are in agreement with the financial statements except for the fact that Shelby County Medical Corporation is not consolidated in this set of financial statements. So think of this as hospital financial statements as opposed to hospital and consolidated with the medical corporation. In financial statement footnote 1, there is a disclosure about what the financial statements would look like if there was a consolidation process, and ultimately what that would do in fiscal year 2024 would add some assets, add some liabilities, and add a little bit of expense. Okay? In terms of the audit, we did have a handful of audit adjustments. I'm going to focus on the ones that I think really kind of matter. That being entry number 3 and 4, accounts receivable allowances. We did increase your allowance for contractual adjustment and potential bad debts for accounts receivable, which reduced your income statement, but we also recorded additional Medicare cost report settlements, which increased your cost or your income statement. So a little bit of offset there. And then the last one being this USDA grants receivable. Your organization, your hospital received $1 million grant to cover some construction costs. You utilized about $650,000 of that grant in fiscal year 2024, but recorded the full $1 million. You're going to earn that full $1 million, but we did have a journal entry to push some of that into fiscal year 2025 as those expenses incurred. So good news is your organization is going to use all that $1 million. It's just going to be in 2 different fiscal years. And so we kind of split the baby on that between the fiscal years where the costs were incurred. The other journal entries were small and kind of minor in nature. Now for other required communications, internal control related matters, material weaknesses, in terms of GASB requirements, your organization is required to draft the financial statements, the balance sheet, the income statement, the statement of cash flows, all the footnotes, every sheet of paper in here in accordance with GASB, your team should draft. You know how many of my clients actually do that? 0. So this is me telling you that we as your auditors play a process and part of the process of drafting those financial statements, giving them to management to review and approve, and then ultimately finalize. Okay? So the fact that we draft your financial statements and we had a handful of journal entries, I'm going to lump that in the material weakness bucket. Am I really concerned about that? And if you as board members, are you really concerned about that? No, you shouldn't. Now, if I had some unreconciled cash accounts or unreconciled accounts receivable accounts, and that happens, that would be a material weakness that the board should be very concerned about. This isn't one of those types of items. We also have significant deficiency over segregation of duties. This is extremely common in critical access hospitals. Kind of cost benefit, you're never going to employ enough people to fully segregate your duties in your accounting departments. In terms of reconciliation, cash deposits, journal entry review, approval, posting, those sort of things. So this is more of a reminder to the board that you play a small role in the internal controls of the organization in terms of reviewing monthly financial statements, asking questions of, Barry and Christie, making sure you're getting answers back that make sense, reviewing disbursements, those sort of things. Okay? A couple of other items. One of the requirements that we have for the state of Iowa code is review your depository resolution and compare that to your bank balances. You did have funds at one particular bank in excess of the depository resolution. Should we show that as a finding in the financial statements for the state of Iowa? It's an easy fix. I believe you've already updated that and you'll be in compliance here in fiscal year 2025, but of required communication. I also want to take a moment and talk about tax levies. There's 82 critical access hospitals in the state of Iowa, of which 41 are governmental entities and receive county tax revenue. So one of the things I like to do is kind of show where your tax levy in terms of dollar amounts fall compared to the other 41 facilities. There's average levy and median levies. So at the bottom there we have your tax askings over the past 10 years. And the median levy is the red, and the average levy is here in yellow. So for a number of years, your hospital has been very flat in terms of how much your tax askings are in relation to what's going on with the other facilities in the state of Iowa. Go back here to fiscal year 2017, 2018 and look at that gap compared to where it is now, right? So as board members, to me, that's a very strong message that anytime you're talking to community members, you can kind of preference it that say, look, our hospital's operations aren't predicated on tax askings. We've kind of held the line in terms of tax askings. Last year we did have an increase, but it's very minor compared to what other facilities are seeing and what other counties are asking. Okay? So let's get into the actual financial statement of net position, or your balance sheet. This is the asset side of things. I try to group things together here a little bit because here in blue I have cash, I have investments, I have assets limited to use, current and long term. They're kind of all in different buckets this year, but you add them all up. Last year you had $23.6 million of cash and investments and assets limited to use. This year 21.9. So a reduction of about $1.7 million of cash and investments. A lot of that went to your construction project, right? So it's not shocking that your cash is down this year versus last year. In terms of accounts receivable here in green, we did have a bit of an increase in accounts receivable. When we get to the income statement, you will also see that you had about a 6% increase in patient revenue during the year, which kind of coincides with the increase in accounts receivable. And then lastly, construction in progress. Obviously, you had that project in place during the fiscal year, a big increase there in construction in progress costs. And once those projects are finalized, they'll go into the depreciable assets and start receiving depreciation. On the liability side, not a whole lot here to highlight on the liability side of your balance sheet. The big increase being the increase in accounts payable for capital costs. We separate those from regular operating accounts payables and construction accounts payables here on the financial statements. Basically what that's saying is you have some construction costs due, some invoices due at the end of the fiscal year. The other one being the increase in net pension liability and pension-related deferred inflows and outflows. Because you're a governmental entity, your employees are members of the IPERS program, and every year the state of Iowa goes and does an actuarial study to say for all the employees that are part of IPERS, what's the projected benefit and outlays over the years, and we compare that to what the assets are at the end of the fiscal year. That gap increased in fiscal year 2024. Liabilities increase more than assets increase, so every participant, every facility that participates in that program gets a piece of that underfunded liability. That liability grew, so your liability grew. It's a paper journal entry, it's not additional dollars that you owe into the program, but because you're a governmental entity, you have to recognize that liability on your financial statements. On the statement of revenue and expenses, changes in net position or the income statement, top line revenue, you'll see here a pretty sizable increase in net patient service revenue. That's twofold. One being just patient volumes. You had a 6% increase in gross patient service revenue or volumes during fiscal year 2024. The other is the Iowa Directed Payment Program, which is basically the state of Iowa entered into a program where all your funds and all facilities in the state of Iowa's Medicaid reimbursement and payments are sent up to the federal government to receive a match, of which the hospital participates in that match. So if you had $1 worth of revenue in fiscal year 2024 and receipts in 2024, those funds were now sent up to the federal government and you receive back an extra $1.72. New program in fiscal year 2024. It'll be in place for fiscal year 2025, the year that we're in, and we expect that to be in place for fiscal year 2026. After that, we're on an annual renewal basis with the state of Iowa and the CMS, Medicare. So an additional $5.2 million of revenue for the hospital. The assessment and fees were $1.3 million. There was a $3.9 million net increase in the bottom line from that program in fiscal year 2024. And I'm telling all my boards and management, do not get too reliant on those dollars, right? Those are funds that may not exist in the next couple of years. So what my clients, and this is what I'm seeing in the state of Iowa, one of three things is happening with those dollars. Either A, they had a project in the past couple of years and maybe their cash was a little depleted, they're using that to kind of refill the coffers. Two, they have construction projects, not too dissimilar to you, they have construction projects coming up and they're going to use that to fund those construction projects instead of taking on additional debt. Or three, they took out debt and they want to pay that down with these additional dollars. Those are kind of the three things I'm seeing critical access hospitals do with some of these directed payment program dollars. So, again, top line revenue up from the directed payment program and patient service revenue and volume increases. In terms of operating income here in green, we talked about your participants in the IPERS program. The backside of that liability entry is additional expenses. You separate that here on your financial statement. So the line to really kind of look at is this operating income before IPERS entry. Last year, a $430,000 loss. This year, about a $1.2 million gain. Again, a lot of that's volume increases in the directed payment program. For non-operating revenues, your interest income, county tax revenue, investment income, fairly consistent between the 2 years. 2.1 this year, $2.6 million last year. Very bottom line, $5 million this year, $4.4 million last year. So really good operating year the past 2 years for your hospital. Now, financial indicators, we're going to look at a couple benchmarks for your facility, 21 through 2024. The other 15 biggest cause in the state of Iowa, because you're one of the bigger causes in the state, and then what's going on with the median facilities. So you guys, the other big facilities, and then what the average cause looking like. Now, for those of you that have heard me talk in the past, the best place for a critical access hospital to make money is outpatient commercial volume, right? We've talked about that in the past. So it's important to kind of know what's going on with your payer mix. Your facility, not dissimilar from a lot of other critical access hospitals, is seeing a huge increase in Medicare Advantage. Look at that, that's doubled in the past 3 years. And why is that important? Because Medicare Advantage pays like Medicare, but it is not Medicare. Medicare pays you cost based off of last year's cost structure. So Medicare Advantage in 2024 is paying you based off your 2023 cost structure. And there's no settlement provision there. You have a receivable from the Medicare program this year, meaning that Medicare underpaid you. So they're underpaying you based off the year of those costs. So they're probably 18 months or more behind the ball in terms of how you're getting reimbursed, and there's no cost settlement there. Plus, Medicare Advantage is really good at denials and delays. Right? So it's not a good payer. It's not a good payer to have. And more of people's facilities' volume is coming from that particular patient class. So I want to make sure I highlighted that here. And that's one of the things that your team has to deal with, staying on top of those Medicare Advantage plans and make sure they're paying you. The other good thing that I saw here for your facility was an increase here in commercial volume. About a 10% increase in commercial volume here in fiscal year 2024. And why that's important? Because here's your write-off percentages by payer. So if I got paid $100, if I did a charge to Medicare for $100, they were going to pay me 54 cents to the dollar, we're going to write off 46. If that same claim was submitted to a commercial payer, I'm going to get paid 65 cents, I'm going to write off 35 cents. So I want commercial outpatient volume because they're our best payer. and you had an increase in that volume here in fiscal year 2024. So that was a good thing. So now looking at your information, the other biggest cause in the state of Iowa, and then the median facilities, let's look at total margin. A little bit of a red herring here out to the left, because fiscal year 2021 was a big COVID year. A lot of those CARES Act you got the cash in 20 and 21. Most people had that revenue hit in 20 and 21 as well. So kind of a misleading bar chart over there. That'll go away here next fiscal year, but in relation to your peers, a very good total margin in 2023 compared to the other big ones in 2023 and the state median for 2023. So again, good total margins for your facility, and a lot of that has to do with all that commercial volume that you have compared to some of your peers. Days cash on hand, same type of thing here, 2021 and 2022, a little inflated because we still have CARES Act dollars, we're spending those dollars down. Get down into 2024, not a shock that your facility saw a decrease in your days cash on hand because you did take out debt to fund that construction project. So what this is we take your income statement expenses, back off depreciation because that's a non-cash transaction, and take it divided by 366 days. And that tells me that your hospital spends about $150,000 per day in expenses. Divide that by all your cash and investments. How long could your facility stay open without additional tax receipts, patient service revenue, those sort of things? This is a business office and revenue cycle metric. It's net days and accounts receivable. How long does it take your hospital to turn a patient claim into cash? On average, about 51 days. Pretty consistent over the years here. The nice thing is with your increases over the past couple of years in patient volume, your business office has kept up with that. Right? Sometimes you'll see where revenue went up 10%, but my days in AR went up 20% because they couldn't keep up with that additional volume. This tells me that your facility does a pretty good job of turning your claims into cash. Very consistent with some of the other bigger facilities in the state of Iowa. A little bit slower than some of these other smaller facilities, but they also have a lot less stuff going on. So a good metric for your hospital. A really good slide here. Remember, we want outpatient commercial volume, so the more outpatient volume we have, the better. You saw a big increase in outpatient volume in 2024. So that's a good thing. Now, where's that volume coming from? A little bit more of that volume came from Medicare, an extra percentage point in fiscal year 2024. But that also means that the increase, that 6% increase in volume also came from other payers. It wasn't just Medicare, right? And we saw that slide back on our gross revenue. So fairly consistent with the state median, a little bit higher than some of your peers in terms of payer mix. Outpatient cost and charge ratio. This is basically a metric of if I charge $1, what did it cost me to provide that service? Well, back in 21, it cost me 47 cents. Here in fiscal year 2024, it cost me 45 cents. So we want that number to keep going down, basically saying we're more efficient in terms of providing the services. It's costing us less, which is great because if a commercial payer is going to pay me $60 for a visit, well, 1 year it cost me $47 to do that service. This year it cost me $45. I have more opportunity in fiscal year 2024 to make a margin on that commercial volume because it cost me less per unit, if that makes sense. And also a good slide compared to your peers here. Your average cost and charge ratio is cheaper than your other big facilities, and not shocking. Again, these smaller facilities don't have as much volume going on, so it costs them a little bit more to provide those services. They don't have those economies of scale. Great slide for the hospital here, debt service coverage ratio. If you don't have any traditional debt, these little blips down here in blue are your leases and your contracts for certain IT softwares, but not traditional loans, debt bonds, those sort of things. Now, in context, if your facility was to go out and incur some debt, $10 million of debt, the math would put you at 16.6. So to get to some of your peers, you'd have to have about $20–25 million of debt to be like some of these other facilities here in fiscal year 2023. It's a great slide for your hospital. got good days cash on hand, you got construction projects that you're cash flowing, and if you needed to take on a little bit of debt, you'd still be a very low leveraged hospital in relation to what we see in the rest of the state of Iowa. Then average age of plant, this is a formulaic calculation of just depreciation divided by accumulated depreciation. Basically what this tells me is over the past couple of years, you have put in capital costs about the same percentage of depreciation. So if you have $1 million of depreciation during the year, you're bringing on enough assets to generate another $1 million of depreciation. This number will go down once that new project comes online here in fiscal year 2025 and it starts depreciating. I went through a lot of information there, a lot of good slides, good trends for your hospital, but I'd like to open it up for any questions, comments, concerns. Oh, and I did thank Christy, darn it. I meant to thank her and the Brendas. I do appreciate when we come on site, they're very attentive, their stuff is reconciled, it's ready to go. I have some other 630 year ends that the audit's still in process and it started before you guys. So, again, thank you to Christy and the Brendas there for their attentiveness and attention to detail when we're on site. We really do appreciate that. Questions?
So do we.
Anything I can elaborate on?
What can we expect to see with that private payer mix? And why would our numbers of private pay insurance be increasing?
This number, your commercial?
Yeah.
Why would it be increasing? Well, some of it has to do with the fact of where you are located, right? You're a bigger community relative to some of the peers here in the state of Iowa, and you have employers in your communities, and their employees carry that commercial revenue, right? So your goal there would be, as a community, to continue to grow, bring in younger individuals that aren't on Medicare, aren't on Medicaid, and be employed at places that have commercial insurance.
And you can see there that Wellmark really hasn't grown that much. We've had some of our local employers switch to away from Wellmark because Wellmark's paying so poorly and stuff, so.
Your Wellmark payments, 10 years ago, you really wanted Wellmark because it was the best payer. It's starting to creep into the Medicare, Medicaid range where that's close to cost. Like, it's not the payer it used to be.
Isn't there a lawsuit that there's an antitrust lawsuit though that Medicare or Wellmark's being sued by hospitals in Iowa, is it?
I'm
aware of it.
familiar with that, but
It was on the news the
possible.
other day that there's an antitrust, I think it's huge, it's 20-some billion dollars that they're trying to recoup in underpayments to hospitals, and I was just curious if that would be something that we would recoup on.
If there was some sort of settlement, my guess would be yes, there would be some sort of recoupment there, but I couldn't answer that question without some additional knowledge there.
Sure.
And this graph here, this may not cover all providers, but the majority of them.
This is hospital totals.
Everything.
This is everything thrown into one bucket. And what's not on there is private pay. It's a small piece of the pie. If you added that all up, you'd be missing private pay, which is a big chunk of it.
You spoke earlier that the Medicare part, is greatly increased, but not to depend on that. Is there?
That's the Iowa Directed Payment Program.
Yeah, or not that program, but is that expected to change in the near future?
That was the Iowa Directed Payment Program. It's in place for 24. Obviously, we have those numbers in our 2024 financials. It's in place for 25. It should be in place for 26. And then after that, all bets are off. We don't know. Then the state has to submit a plan up to the CMS, Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, and it has to be basically approved. So it's not an evergreen program. So again, do not get used to those funds and reliant on those funds. A lot of my clients are basically putting together operating budgets assuming that doesn't exist.
At least for the next couple of years.
It will be there.
It looks like it will be there.
And what that's trying to do, I didn't speak a whole lot about that, but ultimately what it's trying to do is bring Medicaid reimbursement closer to the statewide commercial average. basically saying, look, we're gonna submit our Medicaid dollars up to the federal government and get paid a little bit more for those services, so it's getting paid closer to what we're getting for commercial volume. To the point where Medicaid is actually, for the next couple of years, will be a good payer, because you're getting that extra $1.07 match on every dollar, $1.72 match on every dollar. Good questions. What else?
Jeremy did present to our finance committee last week, so he went into a little bit more detail, and
You're getting
there
the
were
Cliff Notes version.
more questions there, so.
Yep, thank you, Barry, I forgot to mention that.
All right.
Okay,
Anybody
well, if there
else?
are none, I want to just highlight my contact information here on the second slide, phone number, email. We are employed by the board. Every year you sign an arrangement letter to work with us. So if you have questions, give me a call, shoot me an email. Tomorrow, a month from now, a year from now, whatever. You have a question, I'll find you an answer.
Thank you, Jeremy.
Okay, thank you.
We'll move on to the consideration approval of annual compliance report by Laura.
Yeah, the fiscal year compliance summary, annual summary is in your packet on page 8 to 10. The compliance committee meets 6 times a year, every other month, and includes all members of senior admin and 1 member of the medical staff as well. All departments report at least a minimum of annually to the compliance committee. And I'll just go over a few of the highlights from the fiscal year. Behavioral health reviewed all state qualifications to be able to bill services. The business office, the primary denial rate for hospital billing was 7.9%, and professional billing denial rate was 8.3%. That's really lower than the median when compared to the median on both of those. Our business operations was affected for a while due to that Change Healthcare breach. Credentialing reported 100% of initial and reappointments to the medical staff, signed off on the acceptance outlining the compliance code of conduct. Education ensured that all current employees and new employees get the education on fraud, abuse, and waste in the appropriate time frame. Human Resources reported 100% of applicants who accepted the conditional offer of employment had a background check within 30 days. Marketing reviewed all accuracy of any marketing communication that was reported out. The Medical Records Department monitored compliance with documentation, timeliness, and all of the clinical departments review the charge router, making sure all those charges are pushed through in a timely fashion, and pharmacy reviewed all of the medications, over 60,000 medications that were in line for appropriate charges there. Rural Health Clinic is monitoring transitional care billing for when patients are discharged from the hospital and then when they're seen within 2 weeks. That is appropriate. Utilization review reviewed appropriate level of care and continued stay, which was at 100% for that. And then the 340B program reported on documentation of their program and qualified prescriptions. But the full report is on pages 8 to 10 in the packet. And that's an entire year's summary. If you have any questions, just let me know. Thank you.
All right, no questions for Laura. Can I get approval of the annual compliance summary?
Second.
Got a first and a second and a third too. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Same sign, motion carries. What are the Personnel Committee report credentialing by Janine?
The Personnel Committee met earlier. We reviewed a few things. However, there were no credentialing that needed action at this time, so I have no need for that at this point.
All right. Next, we'll go to the CEO report by Barry.
Okay, this is our last phase of the approval part of the expanded rural health clinic and med surg and specialty clinic partial renovations. I think I've showed this at a few meetings. This is a view of what it will look like entering kind of that main entrance into the hospital, with obviously the new clinic off to the right, new expansion off to the right. This is a view from the stoplights, and so that's really kind of a better view of what the new rural health clinic would look like from that vantage point. I've got all of the kind of floor plans that I've gone through probably numerous times for all of you. I don't think I'm going to spend a lot of time on it, but I may have to come back as we go through some of the numbers. So just to give you the timeline on what we're looking at for this project, the cardiac rehab, which will be moved up to the emergency room, that will happen right away once ER moves back to their permanent location. That should take about 2 to 3 months, and it's our own internal staff that's doing that work. The rural health clinic, behavioral health, is scheduled, has already started, obviously, started in August, scheduled to be complete by October 15th. That could extend if we, and I am going to recommend that we do the refresh of the existing first floor. So that will extend that date out to probably February of '26, if the board does approve to go forward with that part of the project. The outpatient specialty clinic, that would be in a later part of the project, starting in August of '25 and going through December of '25. And then inpatient, we'd be looking at starting here in a couple months, and having that go through July of '25.
Barry, would the cardiac rehab, I hate to use this word, be a permanent location then once it moves?
Well,
Yes.
that would be our intent,
Okay.
but you know how things
I
go.
didn't think it was
Things-
temporary, but
Yeah.
I didn't know, okay.
Yep. So taking you back to May 21st, we presented 4 different options, and the option that the board approved to move forward with was option 4, which is a 2-story addition to the east of the physician's clinic, with the first floor being family practice, second floor being behavioral health and shell space, and then of course partial renovation for med-surg and specialty clinic. The estimated cost range was 18.7 to 20.6 million. Since then, there has been a few changes that have come up. The fire suppression for the existing rural health clinic, we are going to be required to sprinkle that area, and so that did add about $300,000 of cost to this project. Also, the bariatrics, we chose to go forward with that, include that in the base bid as opposed to making that an alternate. So the bariatric patient room on the med-surg floor, that's what I'm referring to. So that was added to this project. And some of the alternates, I'll show you here in a bit. The alternate for the first floor refresh did go up in price as well. We did change the nurses station, add to the nurses station on the med-surg floor as well. So there were some additional costs with that. So in July 23rd of '24, the board did approve the site work. You can see that's ongoing right now, $3.3 million. And then in September at the last board meeting, approved $1 million, $1,013,000 for the steel package. So that takes us to where we're at today. And this is a slide that Murray provided to me. The budget that we started with was $20,300,000. I mentioned the fire protection for the existing clinic, $309,000. And then the alternate at that time, that first floor alternate refresh work of the existing clinic was $422,000. So with all that in consideration, we would have been just a little over 21 million. So then going down to the bid phase, already approved the 3.3 million for the site work, the 1 million for the steel work, and then this is the bidding that's been happening over the last month or 2 months. And I'm gonna have Major from Murray just talk a little bit about that process and kind of how that went, just kind of give you a little bit of an update on that.
You want me to stay here or over
Well, whatever you want to do.
I'll stay here. So this is, because this is a construction manager at risk, Iowa delivery within the Iowa public bid laws, we ultimately pre-qualify all of the contractors first, like we've done for the other phases. We ended up soliciting about 100 different contractors with 17 different bid packages. And for the majority of those, we received 3 or more bidders per bid package. So I think if you see our breakdown, we have about 50, 51 people. There's a few areas, specifically pneumatic tube, that's very specialized, elevator very specialized. We don't typically anticipate as many there because of how it's specified, but from our majority of our trades, framing, drywall, paint, great bid response, which is good because a lot of the numbers, for the most part, were really tight, good comparable numbers. So at that point, we're able to come in and have post-bid interviews with what we feel are the top 2 contractors. Everybody's been pre-qualified. We think these are the 2 best numbers. We sit down and we interview each of those individually. So we went through, I think it was 38 post-bid interviews in a week. It was a very busy week, where we walked through every contractor, walked through their scope of work, walked through the drawings, every piece, and then ultimately we provided a list of contractors to you, to your team, and said, here's our recommendation based upon how the bids came in, and that's the result you're seeing here. So really good competitive bids. I think we've got a really good group of trade partners, have some consistent ones from previous projects, and have some new ones that we're excited to work with. Barry, did I cover everything you wanted?
I think so. Any questions for Major? Okay, thanks. So we're coming down to total construction bid result, $20,151,000. The alternate one bid result, that was $618,000. And I want to just go back to what that actually includes. So if we go back to the existing first floor of the rural health clinic, all of this work kind of north of my laser line is included in the base bid. Everything below would be part of that bid alternate on the first floor. So that's what the 618,000 is. We feel like it makes more sense to do this now, at least on this floor, because there is a lot of work that's going to be happening up kind of in the waiting area, the reception, the elevator, kind of a lab area, immunization. So we feel like it makes sense to go ahead with at least the first floor renovation. We will look at the second floor, as I think we can do some of the second floor internally, but we will be looking at that as well down the road. All right, so let's go back to where we're at then. So the total cost with that alternate included is $20,770,000. It is a little bit below what we had estimated, what Murray had estimated at the beginning of the project, or not at the beginning, but halfway through, I guess, was when they came up with that budget. Any questions about any of this? Because my next slide is going to get into equipment that I think we pretty much told you all along that this does not include equipment or furnishings. So I'm going to turn that over to Jeff, and he can talk about the...
So we've been accumulating a spreadsheet on all the equipment. We've gone through room by room. What do we need what do we have that we can reuse, move from one area to another? What do we need to start fresh, new? We came up with the list, and it's broke down by each of the areas. So rural health clinic, behavioral health, the outpatient specialty, and the inpatient. So the vast majority of the equipment that's coming up for the rural health clinic is the elevator. That wasn't included in any of the construction documents. We accommodate that on our side. The furniture, and then each of the exam rooms and procedure rooms need to be outfitted. There's 26 new rooms, 24 exam rooms, 2 procedure rooms that need everything put into them. Includes exam tables, the chairs, the scopes, lights, supplies, everything. We need to have network equipment, obviously, so each of the 2 floors has a network closet that we've looked at. What is the equipment that needs to go into there? Wireless, wired, phones, security, the door and camera access, all goes into that closet. Also a staff lounge, and then every room has to be signed. So a lot of signage that needs to be considered there. In behavioral health, again, network equipment. It is a smaller amount on the second floor because half the space is shell, so we don't need as much equipment to accommodate everything. But then a couple of unique things from behavioral health that we're going to incorporate in this structure versus what's down in the existing is a crisis waiting room and equipment, kind of a multi-purpose room also. Have an additional vitals room, so there's two vitals. Then they have a program called PCIT, which is a parent-child program, and has some pretty unique and specific requirements for that. And again, signage. Outpatient specialty clinic, 3 new additional exam rooms and all the equipment that needs to go into that. New nurses station and the equipment that to accommodate the nurses. We're expanding the staff lounge, so a little bit bigger table, adding a microwave and some ice machines and stuff like that. And again, signage, new rooms. And then on the med surge, the biggest expense is the head walls, updating all of the look and feel of each of the rooms, new head walls to accommodate more complex cases, and spruce the room up a little bit. New nurses stations, so the equipment to supply there. Also the bariatric lift, we've been getting quotes on 700 and 800 pound lifts to assist nurses there to safely move patients. Again, signage, and then updated room accessories such as sinks, cabinetry, and some things like that.
Okay, so the equipment that Jeff just described is the 1.5 million, 1,562,000. The approval needed for the remaining construction is the 16,464,915. So what we would need is, we could probably do 2 separate approvals if that's the way you want to do it, Mike, but that's what we're recommending to the board today.
I just got a question for you on rural health refresh. Is there going to be, since the upstairs maybe won't be disturbed, is there going to be, can we keep the clinic part of it undisturbed or not a hard hat zone so we can get patients in and out, or what's the plans there? Timing?
Yeah, so while this work is being done, the second floor will still be in operation. So will the new clinic, the new expanded area will be in operation as well, but we can't fit all of our providers into the new area, so we have to have one of those floors still operational, and that'll be the second floor. We may try to do some work, like I said, with some of our facility staff might try to take on a couple of those pods during that time, but we need to keep that second floor for the most part operational, up until the first floor is completely done. Then we can look a little bit more at the rest of that second floor. So I guess the reason we're focusing more on the first floor is a couple of things. One, we need to stay in operation during that October to January timeframe. It's also our intent is to use it more for specialty. So there may be some changes we want to make to that area to accommodate specialists. So I guess that's our approach in working on making sure the first floor is completely done, and and maintaining the second floor at least for a period of time as is, so we can operate there.
Sounds good, sounds good. Any other questions before I ask for approval on the remaining construction? Cost of $16,464,915 from the board?
I'll make the motion to approve that remaining construction amount, the 16 million you just said.
Second.
I have a first and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Now we'll get an approval for the extra equipment and furnishings for this, and that's going to be $1,562,518.
I make that motion. I second it.
Okay, we have a first and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And any other things from you, Barry, on this?
Well, just to let you know that I may be asking the board to come back for a special meeting here in the next 10 days regarding the robotic-assisted surgery. Learned a few things in the last week or so about the possibility of having to go through a certificate of need process through the state of Iowa. And so I need to learn a little bit more about that, as well as I'm still waiting on some information from the vendor on the lease, the capital lease. So, but it is something I want the board to, I would recommend the board move forward with fairly soon. So I'm probably going to be asking you to come together for another board meeting either early next week or possibly even the end of this week. So.
Barry, did you get the commitment you were hoping for from the surgeon then?
He's wanting to know that we're moving forward with robotic assisted surgery before he's going to be signing. That's what he's used to, and that's what that's how he wants to practice, and it aligns with what we're feeling we need to do as a hospital moving forward. So.
Okay, great.
Yeah, that's all I have.
Okay. We had a nice detailed report from Jeremy Hyde Bailey about financials, so we've got a good feel for where we're at there, so we're going to defer that. But Christie, if anything else needs to be said about approval of the payroll and claims?
No, I have not had any questions, nothing out of the ordinary.
Okay, with that, can I get an approval of those payroll and claims?
I'll make a motion.
Second.
First and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Anything else to discuss today at the meeting?
Nope.
We'll call it good. Can I get an adjournment motion?
I'll move to adjourn.
Second.
First and second, all in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you for the modesty.